In this video, I'm going to show you how to configure the Windows firewall and the Mac firewall. So whichever system you're using, you'll know how to do it. Let's start with the Windows firewall. We're going to use the Windows Defender firewall with advanced security. To load this up, simply go down to your Windows key or your Start menu, scroll all the way down to where you see Windows Administrative Tools, and then scroll down again once you click on that, and you will find the Windows Defender firewall with advanced security. Once you click on that, it will open. From here, you can create all of the policies you want, setting up inbound rules, outbound rules, monitoring it, etc. Once you have it set just the way you like, you can actually export that policy so you'll have it as a backup anytime you need to go back to it. Right now, you can see my domain profile shows Windows Defender Firewall is off. My private profile shows that it's on, and my public profile shows that it's on. What this means is that in my private network and my public network, I do have the Windows Firewall turned on. In the private network, I don't allow any inbound connections that don't match my rules, but I will allow outbound connections that don't match my rules. In my public network, I have it set the exact same way. Now, if I want to change that, I can go into my inbound rules or my outbound rules and decide how I want that to be done. Let's take a look at some of these rules. For example, we have this one here, which is SSH, which is Secure Shell. All of my profiles allow it. It's enabled for all of them. It will do an allow action, and it's going to allow any program to be run from any address locally to any address remotely over port 22. That may be what you want to do, or it may be something you want to block. Let's go ahead and look at some other ones. Down here, we have App Installer. For App Installer, it's allowing it to go any local address to any remote address, any protocol, and any port. This type of an any rule allows it to have a lot of ability, and so this is going to allow a lot of things through that we might not want. Now, let's say you have a program that you want to add to this. Maybe you have a new web server on this and you're going to run it on port 80. You can hit New. You can then select a program, a port, a predefined, or a custom. In this case, if it's a web server, we would want to do it based on port 80. Then we'll click on Next. Do we want it for TCP traffic or UDP traffic? If it's a web server again, it's TCP. If it's something else that might use UDP, you could set that up. And then what ports is that going to work for? For all of your local ports or specific ports? Well, if it's a web server, it again should be port 80, and for secure, port 443. Then we can go Next. We can allow that connection. We can allow the connection if it's secure, meaning that it has to use something like a VPN tunnel with IPsec, or we can block the connection and not allow any web traffic in. In our case, we want to allow the connection. Then we click on Next, and you can see which of those three networks it's going to apply to. I'm going to allow all three of them to have it applied to it, and then I'll give it a rule. Jason's web server. And that's it. Now you can see that Jason's web server is now going to allow traffic from any program, from any local address, and any remote address over protocol TCP and on port 80 and 443. Now, conversely, if I want to block things from getting in, we would do the exact same thing, except we would set it up as a block or a deny. For example, I don't want to allow anybody to do telnet into my network because telnet is unsecure. So I would set up a new rule, and from there I can block anything on port 23, which is TCP traffic on port 23, and then I'll hit Next. I'll block that connection, and I'll block it for all three of those networks. And I'm going to say blocking telnet. And that's it. You can see how easy it is to set up these rules. For the Security Plus exam, you should feel very comfortable with setting up these type of rules. If somebody says, I want to block TCP on port 23, or I want to block telnet, then you should be able to say, I want to block it from this area and let it go to that area. Now, one more area of the Windows firewall that I want to show you is down here in monitoring. Down in monitoring, you can see which profile is active, as I showed you before, but you also have access to the log file. And if you click on that, you'll be able to see what's currently there. What is being logged right now? Is it logging drop packets and successful connections? Right now it's not, but we can change that if we wanted to. Now, we can also view our active rules. This again brings us back to what those inbound rules are and seeing which ones are actually active on this profile. So you'll notice anything that's all or public is being shown here. Anything that was just private or domain is not, because they're not active for this particular connection. Next, we're going to configure a firewall on a Mac machine. To do that, simply go to the Apple in the upper left corner, and go to System Preferences. From here, you're going to click Security and Privacy, and then you're going to click on the Firewall tab. You can notice that my firewall is on, but I can't click any of the firewall options right now. That's because you have to unlock it by clicking the lock and adding your username and password for the admin account. Once you do that, you can turn off your firewall, or you can turn on your firewall, and you can configure the options. In here, you can block all incoming connections. You can see what applications have been allowed through the firewall. In my case, Skype and Google Drive are allowed to have connections into my computer. And then you can automatically allow built-in software, meaning Apple software, to receive incoming connections, things like iTunes and iMessage. And you can automatically allow downloaded signed software to receive incoming connections, meaning this is software that you trust. And finally, we have stealth mode. What stealth mode does is it makes your firewall not respond and not acknowledge any attempts from somebody to ping your network. So if somebody is doing a ping sweep of your network, my computer is simply not even going to answer. So you won't know if it's up, down, or even there. So how do we add an application to this list to allow incoming connections? Well, Mac makes it fairly easy. You click on the plus sign, you find the application, for example, my chess application, and then hit add. When you do that, it by default is going to allow incoming connections. Now, if I don't want that anymore, I could simply click on it and subtract it, and it won't answer up. As you can see, you don't have the level of fidelity that you have on a Windows machine here in a Mac machine. To get that level of fidelity, you'd have to use the command line firewall tools that are provided, such as PF or IPFW.